The year is 2029. A young boy named Akira cries in front of a family's house, overwhelmed with longing for his father and mother. Every moment, an older girl, Toasa, shows deep empathy for him, holding him tightly and assuring him that everything would be all right, that she would never leave his side. Her father, too, proves to be a kind man, offering comfort and support to the grieving child. 9 years later, in 2038, in the middle of the night, Toasa works in her office while the news plays in the background, reporting yet another story of people harmed by the unchecked rise of artificial intelligence. This time, citizens were organizing a petition to limit the government's use of AI, trying to slow down a technology spiraling out of control. A protest with 50,000 people made headlines. During a televised interview, one woman explained she had been fired because her employer claimed she wasn't skilled enough with AI. At the same time, a desperate father reported that his son was so deluded he wanted to marry an artificial intelligence. Curious, Toasa asked her own robot, Ikikishima, what it thought. The machine replied that AI could locate, analyze, and organize information according to its programming, but lacked the concept of a soul. Toasa, however, countered that, at the end of the day, the human soul was nothing more than electrical impulses generated by the body. The next morning, still in bed, Akira made his feelings crystal clear. He was in love with the girl who had supported him unconditionally since childhood. Half asleep, as if still dreaming, he whispered that he loved Toasa, and the mischievous look on his face betrayed the thoughts he was entertaining about her. But his dream paradise was shattered when his own robot, Tajitsu, woke him up. Realizing how far he had gone in his fantasy, Akira felt guilty. As he got ready, he asked Tajitsu if there was any interesting news. The AI projected an article praising the brilliance of young Dr. Toasa Amagi, who, at only 19 years old, had already taken the android technology field by storm, and was even revolutionizing cryogenics. Seeing that his childhood friend was becoming more famous by the day, Akira accepted Tajitsu's suggestion to reinforce her cybersecurity. Later that morning, after breakfast with Toasa's father, whom Akira also called Dad, Toasa finally appeared. She had slept in, having worked through the entire night on one of her projects. She reminded Akira that he had training that day and teased him about the joys of being young. He suggested that if she really wanted to feel young, she should try going to school like a normal person. Toasa replied that there was no point in attending a place to learn what she already knew. In fact, she thought Akira was the brilliant one, and that he should drop college altogether to join her research. Her father chuckled and reminded them both that life required more than logic and reason to be complete. Eventually, Akira realized it was time to leave, said his goodbyes, and set off. After he was gone, Toasa and her father reflected on the fact that it had been nearly 10 years since Akira came to live with them, and that they should do something special to celebrate. On the street, on his way to training, Akira noticed paparazzi trying desperately to snap photos of the famous young scientist living under the same roof as him. Toasa Amagi was extraordinary. At just 18, she had already piled up doctorates and patents, led her own company, and served as a research consultant. To feel worthy of a woman like that, Akira knew he would have to upgrade his role from family to boyfriend. The only question was how. When Akira was 7, he lost his parents in a car accident. Since they were estranged from the rest of the family, he was left completely alone. That's when his father's best friend, Dr. Kazuya Amagi, took him in. On the very first day in his new home, Toasa, being a year older, asked Akira to call her Big Sister. The boy never objected. In fact, even at such a young age, he felt nothing but immense gratitude toward his new family. The truth was, they had saved him. Still, as he grew older, Akira could no longer be satisfied with just being Toasa's little brother. Later that day, at javelin practice, Akira managed a throw of 37 meters. Impressive, but still not enough to beat Takeda, meaning he now owed his friend lunch. Meanwhile, Toasa was in an important meeting with a partner about sharing seismic design data, just another one of her countless discussions on complex matters. After granting the access that would allow her partner to build the world's largest bridge, she ended the call and turned her focus back to something more personal, the gift she wanted to give Akira. Her father had already chosen a limited edition pair of sneakers from 10 years ago, but she wanted something different. Scrolling through old photos of her brother, she tried to spark an idea. The problem was, he had grown up so much that she no longer knew exactly what he might want. Hours later, Akira returned home and was greeted by Toasa, who slipped into her motherly tone, asking if he would confide in her if something was ever wrong. He teased her for worrying too much and left her hanging without an answer. Flustered, Toasa simply told him that dinner was ready. After such a long, exhausting day, Akira wasted no time diving into the meal, especially since it turned out to be stuffed peppers, one of his favorites. His sister asked what he wanted to eat the next day and promised to cook it for him. But Akira reminded her that tomorrow was his turn to cook, and he already had a recipe he was dying to try. After dinner, the two of them stayed in the TV room, where Toa was trying to figure out what her brother might be interested in so she could find the perfect gift for him. But it was hard for him to say anything, especially since they already had so many things at home to keep them busy. Suddenly, their robots caught their attention with an urgent matter. Apparently, a large part of the population was demanding that Toa put a stop to her research on Robotech Omagi. A church leader, for example, from an ethical and religious standpoint, would not tolerate the creation of androids, given how strikingly similar they were to human beings. Because of the seriousness of the situation, Kazuya joined his daughter to talk about what could be done. The young scientist was deeply worried about the future of her work, especially since, in her view, the development of androids would bring enormous benefits to society. Faced with that, her father promised to reach out to some analysts and government officials he knew to better understand the next steps. Toa felt grateful for her father's support, while Akira was left disheartened, feeling there was nothing useful he could possibly do for his sister. Later that evening, the boy reads several articles online about the global pressure to shut down Robotech research. According to Tajitsu's calculations, there was an 82% chance that Toasa would be forced to stop. At that moment, Kazuya appeared and asked Akira to be a strong emotional support for his sister because, in such a delicate time, she would need him more than ever. After their father left, Tajitsu teased Akira about his obvious romantic feelings for his stepsister. Even so, the boy swore he would do everything he could to stand by the woman he loved through this difficult chapter. In the days that followed, there wasn't much flashy or dramatic that Akira could do after all. He was just a young man living under the same roof. Still, whatever he could do, he did with all his heart. The most important thing, he thought, was to keep her encouraged and hopeful, and so he devoted himself to exactly that. One day, Kazuya told his children that Toasa's rival companies were heavily invested in pushing for Robotech's downfall, simply to sabotage her and take the lead in the technological race. In response, Toa mentioned that she had been receiving a suspicious flood of financing and membership emails in recent days. Her father assured her they all seemed to come from the same sender. Either way, the scientist never accepted any of those offers. The next day, she was staring at those emails, silently wishing people would stop trying to sabotage her work in every possible way. Just then, Akira came home from school and, mustering his courage, invited his sister to go to the zoo with him. Hearing that invitation, all she could do was run to her room, realizing that, in fact, Akira had just asked her out. Through her watch, the Kikushima asked whether this wasn't the perfect time to finally tell the boy how she truly felt. But Toa was far from ready to take that kind of leap. On the contrary, she jumped online, searching for any kind of solution to this complicated dilemma. One way or another, in the end, she agreed to go to the zoo. And Akira had nailed the invitation. It had been years since his sister had gone anywhere like that. And the truth was, she was excited, practically glowing like a child as she watched the animals. After the zoo, they went to the movies, where both of them felt the undeniable sense that something more than friendship was in the air. But the outing didn't end there. Wanting to prove he knew what he was doing, Akira took his sister to a spa, where she enjoyed a princess-like evening of luxurious baths and massages. When the spa was over, the two went to a cafe and marveled at the robot that came to clear their plates once they had finished eating. Toasa thought it was the cutest thing in the world after all. Robots had always been her favorite. Then, out of nowhere, Akira pulled a gift from his bag and, with sudden bravery, handed it to his sister. A plush toy called Dove, which he had built himself using Toasa's own artificial intelligence framework. The girl was amazed to realize that Akira had been studying her research in secret. Back when she had asked what he had been interested in lately, he'd said nothing, but the truth was, he had been 100% focused on her work, digging deeper and deeper. Yet that wasn't the only reason Akira also wanted to understand her more, because he didn't want to be just her younger brother forever. Embarrassed, Toa changed the subject, asking if the stuffed toy was based on a Shih Tzu. Akira confirmed it was. He remembered her once saying she liked that breed. Later, on the way home, the two walked side by side through the subway, unable to look each other in the eye. It was obvious the conversation had reached a very awkward place. Even so, once they stepped out of the station, Toa asked her brother to take another walk with her before going home. During their stroll, she led him to a spot they both loved and told him that tomorrow would mark 10 years since Akira became part of the family. She then gave him a photo album and an MP3 player, a gift he absolutely adored. But that wasn't all. Summoning all her courage, she confessed that she felt the same way he did, reminding him of the conversation they had left unfinished at the cafe. According to her, Akira had become not only a constant presence in her life since they met 10 years ago, but also the very reason she kept moving forward. Over time, she had tried to convince herself that Akira was only her little brother. But the truth was, her heart raced every time they were together. And with that, the boy tore down every barrier. He didn't just tell her he loved her, he asked her to marry him right then and there. Tuasa's first reaction was to let out a scream of sheer shock and surprise. Akira tries to take it back for a moment and explain that it's not exactly what he meant. But since the damage was already done, he turns around and admits that yes, that's exactly what he was saying. Seeing that things are getting serious, Toa doesn't back down and replies that she feels the same way. But they couldn't do it now after all, they're still too young. First, they should at least be in a relationship, maybe even boyfriend and girlfriend. And then, when the right time comes, who knows, maybe they could have a family of their own. The next day, Tajitsu praises Akira for taking such an important step toward the future. Still, she warns him that the real challenge starts now. The boy agrees after all, he has to be there for Tuasa, no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Tuasa slowly finds herself falling for her new friend, Dove. She takes the chance to thank Ikikishima for helping her deal with the whole situation with Akira, since it allowed them to finally move forward. To that, the robot admits she was sick and tired of watching the two of them wasting time. With the machine showing such a human-like attitude, Toa considers calling her a personality artificial instead of just intelligentsia. Speaking of that, Toa finds it ironic that people use AI for everything. But when someone's on the verge of creating an artificial personality indistinguishable from a human being, no one wants it. In response, Ikikishima points out that humans have never been very welcoming to discoveries that might threaten their control over the world. On that note, the scientist asks the AI to review the research script for android development. In the following scene, a reporter is broadcasting live in front of Robotech Omagi, right in the middle of a protest triggered by a shareholders meeting at the company. Inside the auditorium, behind the stage curtain, Akira is struck by the sheer importance of Robotech shareholders, who happen to be world leaders. Tuasa appears at her brother's side and tells him that if she can win over public opinion with this presentation, it'll be a huge step forward for android technology. At that moment, the doctor is called to the stage. She greets the audience and promises to address every question and concern they may have. She then introduces the Life Company project, a plan to take humanity to the next level. By integrating an AI device into the human body through cybernetic technology, people would be able to access artificial intelligence in real time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Of course, many are worried about the supposed dangers of such an endeavor, but Dr. Amagi reassures them that there will be no problems and that she'll soon explain the details. Right then, a man in the audience rushes the stage, draws a gun, and points it at the scientist, claiming she is committing blasphemy against humanity by creating these robots. Akira bolts toward his sister to protect her. Just as the police arrive to intercept the armed man, shots are fired as Akira tackles Toa to the ground, shielding her with his body. But tragedy strikes. She is hit by a bullet in the stomach, and as the police fail to subdue the assailant, more shots ring out, 3 of them hitting Akira in the back. Collapsing beside the woman he loves, the boy can no longer resist his wounds. His vision fades, his eyes slowly closing as his life slips away. In the next scene, he wakes up naked, bound high up in some ruined technological structure until he manages to break free of the cables and crash to the ground. Somehow, he is alive, with no trace of his gunshot wounds. As he takes in his surroundings, he realizes he is inside a devastated building. Looking through a gaping hole in the wall, he sees the city outside reduced to ruins. While a hooded girl watched Akira Haimgami from afar, the boy began to think this was nothing more than a dream. But when a stone suddenly fell and struck his head, Akira realized the situation was far more real than he'd like it to be. He had no memory of how he ended up there. All he knew was that he'd fallen out of some kind of medical capsule, or whatever that thing was supposed to be. In the middle of all this, a man appeared with his daughter at his side, speaking a strange language and wearing clothes unlike anything Akira had ever seen. Strangely enough, the two of them seemed delighted to see him, And then, for some reason, the man's words began to translate themselves instantly. Called the Sage, Akira understood that an earthquake had caused the ruins to collapse. Concerned, they had come to check on him. The little girl teased that the stranger was naked, and her father quickly apologized for young Idhai's behavior. Right after that, Akira collapsed. The man carried him straight to a cart drawn by oxen. When his daughter asked if the boy would be all right, the driver said he thought Akira would pull through. Eventually, the unconscious boy stirred and woke. Calmer now, he thanked the two strangers for their help, but insisted they must have mistaken him for someone else. His name was Akira Haimdami. At that, the driver called him Lord Akira and introduced himself as Uya, the head of the village just up ahead. The little girl was his daughter, Idhai. Curious, Akira asked who this sage was. Uya explained that the sage was a god venerated by their people, consecrated within those very ruins, a divine being said to grant limitless knowledge to his followers. According to Uya, Akira had been sleeping there since long before he was even born. Their village had been entrusted by Ol to guard that sacred place. Honestly, Uya admitted, he never thought the sage would awaken again. Looking around at the devastation, Akira wondered if this city had been through some kind of war. Suddenly, fragments of memory flickered in his mind, and he remembered Toasa, but he was still far from understanding what had happened. Uya pointed out that they were about to arrive at Hakodate village, a name that struck Akira as familiar. He glanced around and spotted Goryakaku Tower, the very one he had visited on a school trip back in elementary school. Seeing him lost in thought, Uya advised him to ease his mind a little. That seemed wise, so Akira rested his head on the pillow, once again convincing himself that all of this was nothing more than a strange dream. Before long, Uya astonished his wife by bringing home none other than the great sage in the flesh. When Akira woke again, the woman happily announced that their house could serve as his temporary home. Later, their guest shared a meal with the family and some others. He told them about the advanced technologies of his past. From the era known as the Common Age, long, long ago, Uya and his wife could hardly believe how far civilization had once come. Akira then asked how long he had been asleep, but Uya could only admit he had no idea. As simple villagers, they had no access to formal history. Some of the men present remarked that having the sage among them was like possessing a relic, and that they needed to notify Ole, the unified institute that governed the world. Alarmed, Akira asked what had happened to his country, Japan. Uya was surprised by the name. That's what the sage had called the region in those times. In truth, Ole had dissolved all national governments. With their administration, countries no longer existed, and lasting world peace had been achieved. Wars were gone. Shifting the subject, Idhai asked how old Akira was. He replied that he was 18, or at least he had been. He'd stopped counting after falling asleep for what seemed like centuries. Growing impatient, the men pressed Uya to report the sage's return immediately. Otherwise, the whole village could be in danger. If they made the slightest mistake, Ol would make an example out of them, just as they had with others who tried to hide relics. Uya's wife lost her patience and snapped that Akira had only just awakened. He didn't even understand what was happening yet. Couldn't they at least give him some time to get his bearings? Until then, there was no reason for Ol to be told anything, and she would tolerate no more whining until things settled down. Idhai copied her mother's commanding tone, earning herself a gentle pat on the head in return. Meanwhile, the baby who had been sleeping in a cradle woke up crying from all the shouting. His mother scooped him into her arms to soothe him, reassuring Akira at the same time that he could relax, that everything would be fine. That night, Akira was given Idhai's bed while the girl was forced to sleep on the floor. Unable to close his eyes, he thought back to the unusual meal from dinner. It had been delicious, but no matter how he tried, he couldn't fall asleep. Restless, he stepped out onto the second-floor balcony and gazed up at the sky, guessing it must be summer. From there, he looked across the land and noticed many small settlements scattered around the region. Yet despite the view, Haimgami still felt as though he was dreaming, certain that any moment he would wake up and find everything back to normal. Suddenly, the name Tuasa crossed his lips. Where could she be? At that very moment, the hooded girl was still watching from a distance. She spotted a man leaving in the dead of night, riding away on horseback. By morning, Akira washed his face in the well water, determined to face reality. Tuasa might be in danger, and he needed to find her as soon as possible. Searching for clues, he decided to ask Idhai for a little help when she came into sight. In the next scene, the two are at the street market where the little girl's family usually does their shopping. Observing the local customs, Akira supposes that this tribe is culturally comparable to the 18th century in the world he knows. since they even have a circulating currency that suggests someone is guaranteeing its value, probably that old people. Akira asks the short girl if there's a library around, since he needs to learn more about this strange civilization. But the girl has no idea what that would be. When the young man explains that it's like a place where there are lots of books, the native imagines he must mean the school. Right beside them, as the two head toward the school, the hooded girl buys accessories at a stall, always keeping her identity hidden. As soon as he arrives at his destination, Akira notices that none of the books there seem to have relevant information about what he's looking for, especially about this organization called OLE, which makes him imagine that they are censoring certain information. Since that's the case, the boy asks if there's some way to find OLE's top brass. When she hears this question, the little girl storms out of the school, shouting and cursing against those people she hates so much, because to her they're nothing but arrogant fools who only know how to solve everything through violence. Even so, she says those guys are not in the village. Further ahead, the outsider comes across a kind of celebration that he tries to understand, since it looks like a wedding, but there seem to be only women there. The native doesn't know what a wedding is, so she explains that this event is an ALC. When two people love each other enough to make a vow and become sea-ailers. Confused, the guy asks if that's a marriage between women, but Idhai really has no idea what that means. As she already said, this is an ALC, and it has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. In an ALC, there can be several different groups. A man and a woman, two women, two men, or four people, and so on. In this case, what they're seeing is a group of 4 women. Akira comments that it's a little similar to marriage in the society he comes from, where 2 people make a vow and then live together for the rest of their lives. Idhai finds it funny that a person would make vows with only one, when in an ALC you can have more than that. However, it can't be too many people. Otherwise, OLE shows up and puts an end to the mess, tired of that institute's involvement in all the village's affairs. Akira assumes from this that an ALC is like a promise different groups make to live together. Idhai confirms and explains that in her house, the ones who made the ALC were her father, Papa Vok, and her mother, a group of 3. Having said that, the little girl pulls her friend toward another place. In the next scene, we go to the year 2038. When Akira was talking with Toasa about Project LC, which promised to give humans an upgrade, his brother thought it was an interesting idea, but Toa still hadn't found investment to carry the plan forward. About Project LP, Ikikishima said it would be crucial to establish the foundations for the development of androids. And speaking of crucial, that day Akira took an important step in his intention of a relationship with Toasa, so he gave his big sis a ring as a birthday present. On that note, Toa asked him to stop calling her Big Sis. Back to the present moment, sitting with Idhai in a corner of the market. Akira can't stop thinking about the cultural shock of this ALC, and the difference it has from marriage as he knows it. The young man only stops thinking about it when he greets Taberna, who has just arrived with her baby in her arms. Apparently, Taberna needs a hand from her friend. So, the visitor is taken to a motor vehicle that broke down in yesterday's earthquake, to see if he can fix it. Akira notices that the intake valve is bent, so, to everyone's surprise, he shows that he can repair the car and gets the old wreck running again. According to him, he's liked working with machines since he was a kid. In the middle of the crowd's celebration when the vehicle was repaired, the smiles fade from their faces with the arrival of Emissary Canis. Ashamed and with his head down, Wia's partner denounces that the sage is present, pointing directly at Akira Haimgami. At over 2 meters tall, the giant approaches the outsider and crouches down to evaluate him from head to toe. When the young man asks, he introduces himself as Percussus Canis, General Emissary of OLE from the Northern District H427, but says he can be called the all-powerful Commissioner Canis. Seizing Akira, Canis claims the boy is considered an archaeological relic that was improperly unearthed from ancient ruins. Squeezing the boy's head in his hand, the OLE member reminds them that controlling the flow of information is the basis of the organization. Wia asks the emissary not to do that, but Canis isn't interested, and even accuses the villager of being a traitor for not hiding the relic's presence in the village. Using a weapon tied to his wrist, the commissioner fires into the peasant's leg and also orders his guards to detain the father and daughter so they can give their testimony for having found the relic first. Wia argues that he was going to report everything once things calmed down, but Percussus doesn't want to hear any lame excuses. He draws his electric blade and delivers a powerful shock to the civilian's open wound, causing unbearable pain that chills Akira's spine. As if that weren't enough, the aggressor's laughter echoed through the area like a diabolical omen. After controlling the situation, Kenize throws Akira, Wia, and Idhai into a cell attached to a train, as if it were a wagon. Akira feels guilty for having caused all of this, while Wia reassures the young man, despite the wound in his leg clearly becoming something serious. Upon arriving at the destination, Kenize ordered his armed men to leave the relic in the cell and bring the other two, since he would soon get rid of them. Speaking of which, the chief sent 3 soldiers back to Hakodate village to kill all the peasants, as he had decided that everyone who knew about the relic's existence must die. In despair, still locked up, Akira called the man a monster. Ignoring the insult, Kenize said it was good that the relic would release all its ancient knowledge and help him rise in rank. That said, when the emissary pointed his weapon at Idhai's head, the hooded woman appeared and smashed Akira's cell with a sword made of true luminous matter, resembling a lightsaber. With unstoppable speed, she subdued Kenize and delivered a kick that sent the giant flying as if he were just a soccer ball. Badly beaten, the man ordered his soldiers to kill the enemy. Before they could shoot, the mysterious heroine revealed that she somehow knew Akira, but without going into detail, she told the boy to find a safe place to hide. At that, the soldiers opened fire, but the woman activated a shield that deflected the bullets back at the shooters, killing them all. After that, she drew her blade again and destroyed each of the armed opponents scattered around the area, slicing every one of them to pieces without mercy. Running in desperation, Kenize asked who the hell this wretch was. While the pursuer scorned the officer's cowardice, he who threw his men forward to die instead of himself. At that moment, one soldier was about to shoot the woman, but Akira threw a piece of iron at his head and stopped it from happening. Kenize took advantage of this moment to grab a minigun on the train and began firing wildly in the direction of his opponent. Now, no matter how skilled she was, the commissioner was certain that no one could escape from a machine gun of that caliber. On the other hand, the mysterious figure showed she was on another level. By activating a weapon hidden in her body, the woman fired at her target and violently disintegrated emissary Kenize. The shot was so vast and powerful that it struck a mountain in the background and caused a gigantic explosion. After dealing with the problem, the heroine revealed that she was an android called Yugir. However, upon seeing her face, Akira could swear that the person before him was Tawasa. As if that were not enough, the supposed Yugir declared that the two of them should marry. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.